The Dell XPS 15 and MSI Prestige 15 are both thinner and lighter laptops that offer similar features and specs. But what are the differences, and which one should you get? In this detailed comparison, I'll look at pretty much everything to help you decide which one is right for you. First, let's cover the differences in specs between the two units I'm testing with. They've both got 6-core 12-thread Intel CPUs. However, the Prestige 15's is a 10th Gen U series, while the Dell's is a 9th Gen H series. Both have NVIDIA GTX 1650 graphics. However, the Prestige 15's is the lower-powered Max-Q variant. Both have dual-channel memory, however the XPS 15 I tested has double at 32GB, but you can of course change that when ordering. They've both got NVMe M.2 SSDs for storage, but again, like memory, size will vary based on what you select. They've both got a 15.6-inch screen. However, my XPS 15 has a 4K OLED panel, while my Prestige 15 has a 1080p IPS level panel, though it's also available with the 4K IPS option too, just no OLED in the Prestige. Both laptops came with the latest Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5, but were both too thin to have gigabit Ethernet, so you'll need to use a dongle if you need that. Both laptops are available with different specs. You can find examples and updated prices linked in the description. These are the highest spec options in terms of processor and graphics though. Both laptops are made of metal. My XPS 15 has a silver lid, while the Prestige 15 is a dark blue. The interior of the XPS 15 is a matte black carbon fiber composite with a sort of rubberized feeling texture, and the Prestige 15 is more of the same matte dark blue metal. Build quality of both was good due to the metal design, but there was definitely an edge to the XPS 15 here. The Prestige 15 was about 320 grams lighter than the XPS 15 when comparing the laptop only, so that extra weight is probably what adds to the build quality. The XPS 15 has a slightly heavier 130 watt power brick compared to the 90 watt option with the Prestige 15. As for size differences, the Prestige 15 is also just a tiny bit smaller in every dimension, so when combined with the weight difference, it's going to be a better option in terms of portability. My XPS 15 has a 4K OLED panel, though it's available with other options like 4K or 1080p IPS. My Prestige 15 has a 1080p IPS level panel, but it's also available with a 4K IPS level option too, which has better colors. The 1080p screen in the Prestige 15 can't touch the OLED panel in the XPS. The OLED panels are just amazing in comparison. If you're looking at doing photo or video editing on the Prestige 15, I'd recommend going for the 4K option just to get the better screen, though the 1080p one wasn't too bad. There was some bleed with the Prestige 15. Granted, I never noticed it even while viewing darker content, but that will vary between laptops and panels. There's no bleed for my XPS 15, as it doesn't exist with OLED, but expect different results if you're looking at an IPS-based XPS. OLED isn't perfect though. There's the potential for burn-in over time, it uses PWM to adjust brightness, and the screen is glossy which shows reflections, while the Prestige is matte. Neither of these laptops have G-Sync, and screens on both are wired to the Intel integrated graphics, so you're stuck with Optimus. And they both only have 60Hz panel options. There was more screen flex present in the Prestige 15 despite the lid also being metal. Again, the build quality of the XPS was superior. The XPS couldn't be opened with one finger though, so it may have more weight to it towards the back. Either way, both felt fine to use sitting on my lap. Both laptops have a 720p camera in the center above the screen, but neither have IR for Windows Hello support. This is what the webcam and microphone look and sound like on the Dell XPS 15. The webcam's a bit below average and quite blurry, and the audio is about average. This is what the camera and microphone look and sound like on the MSI Prestige 15. Here's how typing sounds, and this is what it sounds like when we set the fan speed to maximum. So you can still hear me over the fan. Neither keyboard has a numpad. The layouts are similar, though the Prestige 15 has larger arrow keys, a smaller right shift, and additional buttons on the right side. Both keyboards just have white backlighting, which illuminates all keys and secondary functions. No RGB lighting here. The Prestige 15 has 3 levels of brightness, while the XPS 15 just has 2 levels of key brightness, but you can turn both off if you prefer. Both keyboards were fine for typing with, but I personally preferred using the Prestige 15. Here's how they sound to give you an idea of what to expect. Both touchpads use precision drivers, were smooth to the touch, and worked well. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go with the XPS 15, but no problems using either. It just felt a little nicer. The extra width on the Prestige 15 wasn't a problem. Palm rejection seemed decent even if you accidentally touch it while typing. There's a fingerprint scanner in the touchpad of the Prestige 15, and it worked pretty well and was fast enough. The XPS 15 has an optional fingerprint scanner in the power button, and it seemed just slightly faster than the Prestige when it came to unlocking the machine. Keyboard flex was on the lower side with both. It's hard to fairly compare here as I tested the Prestige 15 on a desk that moves a little more. Fingerprints and dirt were fairly well hidden with both laptops, and both were easy to clean, though perhaps a slight edge to the Prestige 15 as it's a smooth metal while the XPS is more textured. On the left, they've both got a HDMI 2.0 output, USB 3 Gen 2 Type-C Thunderbolt 3 port, though the Prestige 15 has 2, and 3.5mm audio combo jack. The XPS 15 also has the USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type-A port and power input on this side. The Prestige 15 uses Type-C charging, so you can use either of these two ports to charge it. On the right, both have an SD card slot, however the Prestige 15's is micro size. Both have USB Type-A ports, Gen 1 for the XPS 15 and Gen 2 for both on the Prestige 15. The XPS also has a button to show the battery charge level as well as a lock slot. There are air exhaust vents on the back of the Prestige 15, while the XPS 15 has a cleaner look. However, this is at the expense of heat instead being exhausted below the screen. Otherwise, there's not much going on at the front of either. Both have air intake vents underneath towards the back. Otherwise, not much else going on here. To get inside, you need to remove 10 TR5 screws from the XPS 15. And then there are another 2 Phillips head screws underneath the magnetic logo flap thing. The Prestige 15 just has 11 Phillips head screws to remove. Inside, they both have the battery down the front and 2 memory slots in the middle, along with a Wi-Fi 6 card on the left. The Prestige 15 has 2 NVMe M.2 slots though, while the XPS 15 just has 1. The 2 speakers are found on the front of the XPS 15, while the Prestige 15 has them on the left and right sides. The speakers on the XPS 15 sounded noticeably better compared to the Prestige 15, and they also got louder at maximum volume. However, the latency mod results were noticeably better with the Prestige 15. The XPS 15 is powered by either a 3-cell 56Wh battery or larger 6-cell 97Wh battery, which is what I've got here, while the Prestige 15 has a 4-cell 82Wh battery. Despite the XPS having a larger battery, the Prestige 15 was lasting longer. Either way though, these are 2 of the longest running times I've recorded out of all laptops tested, with over 8 hours on the XPS just watching YouTube and over 9 hours for the Prestige 15. So both are offering great results. Now let's look at thermals. Both laptops were tested in an ambient room temperature of 21 degrees Celsius, and I'm using the best possible performance settings available with each. These are the CPU temperatures of both machines while under combined CPU and GPU stress tests. We'll check the GPU results shortly, so for now, just keep in mind that these are CPU only results, but for combined loads. The Prestige 15 was about 10 degrees cooler at idle, however when actually under load, it was hotter. These are the CPU clock speeds during these same tests. It's worth mentioning I was only able to undervolt the Prestige 15 by -0.1 volts, while the XPS 15 could go to -0.14 volts. But this will vary by machine, those are just what I used here. Either way, although the Prestige 15 was warmer on the CPU as we just saw, the performance was significantly higher as a result. When we look at the GPU results for these same combined CPU and GPU workloads, the XPS 15 was hotter in all instances. Which makes sense given the Prestige 15 has the lower powered Max-Q 1650. The clock speeds from the XPS 15 were slightly higher. Again, not that unexpected, as it's basically the same thing just with a higher power limit. And higher power equals more performance and heat. These are the GPU power limits being hit in these tests. So the Prestige 15 was able to reach its 35W limit, while the XPS 15 wasn't getting to its 50W limit in this worst case stress test. In order to achieve this though, it seems that the XPS 15 suffers greatly in CPU performance, as the power limit gets capped to 15 watts after a few minutes of running. Basically, this means if you need good CPU performance in combined CPU and GPU workloads, the Prestige 15 will probably offer a better result, while the XPS 15 has more GPU power. Here's what we're looking at in terms of Cinebench R20 scores from both machines with their best performance modes enabled. As we saw earlier, the CPU performance from the Prestige 15 was better due to the higher sustained power limit, so it's coming out ahead both in terms of single core and multi-core performance. You can check the card in the top right if you want to see more CPU comparisons between the 10710U and 9750H. As for the areas where you'll actually be putting your hands, at idle the Prestige 15 was cooler, which isn't surprising given the internals were around 10 degrees cooler when doing nothing. With the stress tests going, the Prestige 15 was a little cooler on the keyboard area, though both get to around 50 degrees in the hotspot, which for the XPS is in the middle of the keyboard. For the Prestige 15, it's closer to the back where you're less likely to touch. Here's how fan noise sounded during these tests. I couldn't hear the fan noise at all at idle. They were both completely silent. When under load, the Prestige 15 was a little louder. However, you've got the option of customizing fan speed, so it was definitely louder if you max it out, which is how I did all of my thermal testing. The XPS 15 has no fan control though, so you can't customize it how you like. I suspect many people will be looking at these laptops for video editing, so let's compare Adobe Premiere export times. Both laptops were pretty close together. There was only around a minute difference in export times. However, the XPS 15 was consistently a little ahead in this test. Next, let's compare some games. As both laptops were tested at different times, different NVIDIA drivers were in use. However, I've explicitly not included results in games where the NVIDIA changelog has noted performance improvements. Battlefield 5 was tested in campaign mode. I've got the MSI Prestige 15 in red and the Dell XPS 15 in purple, and I've tested all setting levels available. In this game, there's a massive performance drop-off for the Prestige 15 at ultra settings. It wasn't quite as far behind at the lower levels though. Shadow of the Tomb Raider was tested with the game's built-in benchmark tool. In this test, the performance was the same with the lowest setting preset. However, once we max it out with the highest settings, the XPS 15 was 19% faster. Control was tested running through the same area of the game, and it was a win for the XPS 15 regardless of the setting level used, both in terms of 1% low and average FPS. With the high setting preset in use, the XPS 15 was 17% faster than the Prestige 15. PUBG was tested using the replay feature. Although different replay files were used, I do the same test run. The results were much closer together in this test, with the Prestige 15 actually slightly ahead in average FPS at all setting levels. Fortnite was also tested using the replay feature. Again, different replay files, but I create them doing the same test pass through the game, so results should be fairly comparable. The results were similar, and both were quite close together in terms of averages and 1% low, until epic settings where the 1% low performance on the Prestige 15 drops back. Assassin's Creed Odyssey was tested with the game's benchmark tool. This is generally a CPU heavy test, however the XPS 15 was still ahead at most setting levels. It was 23% faster at ultra high settings, but at the other setting levels the difference was much more minimal. Dota 2 was tested playing in the middle lane, and there wasn't much of a difference here either, though the XPS 15 was performing a bit better at most setting levels, with a 7% lead at ultra settings. Granted, I doubt this is something you'd really notice when playing given the high frame rates. In The Witcher 3, the XPS 15 was ahead in all aspects, though at ultra settings there was again just a 7% lead, with a much larger 34% improvement to the 1% low performance. The Division 2 was tested with the built-in benchmark, and this was another game where the results were very close together. At all setting levels, the Prestige 15 was actually ahead in 1% low performance, and in all but low settings was winning in average FPS too. Ghost Recon Breakpoint was also tested with the benchmark tool. However, this time, at all setting levels except low, the XPS 15 had a massive lead, coming out 53% ahead in average FPS with the highest setting preset, presumably where we're more GPU bound. Rainbow Six Siege was another that was tested with the game's benchmark, and there was a 10% higher average frame rate from the XPS 15 at ultra settings. Overwatch was tested in the practice range, which allows me to perform the exact same test pass on each machine. At epic settings, the difference was extremely minor, but it grows as we step down to the lower setting presets. Borderlands 3 was tested with the built-in benchmark, and the results here were very close together, though the XPS 15 was ahead for the most part, with a larger difference in 1% low. On average, over these 13 games tested, the XPS 15 was 17.7% faster in terms of average FPS. The XPS 15 was ahead in most games. However, there were 5 titles where the difference was extremely marginal without any real differences, at least with the highest setting preset. If you care about gaming or GPU power in general, then it looks like the XPS 15 will be the better choice due to the 1650 not being max Q, despite the lower CPU performance noted earlier. The XPS 15 I'm testing with does also have double the memory, but in most of these titles that shouldn't really be enough to matter. I've also got the overall and graphics scores from 3DMark's Firestrike and TimeSpy benchmarks. Like the games, the XPS 15 was again coming out ahead. I've tested storage with Crystal Diskmark. The XPS 15 was scoring much better in terms of read and write performance. However, results will probably vary by region based on the SSD you pick when ordering. The SD slot on the XPS 15 also performed well. Now for the final difference, the price. You can check updated prices using the links in the description. At the time of recording, the MSI Prestige 15 with similar specs to what I've tested here goes for $1,400 US. If you want the 4K option with double memory and storage, it's $1,800 US. The XPS 15 I tested with 4K OLED screen, 16GB memory and 1TB SSD goes for around $1,960 US. However, if you're fine with a 1080p IPS screen and 256GB SSD, it can be had for $1,400 US. Same price as the cheaper of the two Prestige 15s shown earlier. It really seems like you're paying a fair bit more to get the OLED panel, so you'll need to decide how important that is to you. Finally, let's summarize the differences between the two to help you decide which you should get. Both laptops are available with similar hardware. However, the XPS 15 has a 9th gen Intel 9750H CPU, while the Prestige 15 has a 10th gen 10710U CPU. Based on the power levels being reached though, the processor in the XPS is capped harder, so the Prestige does better in terms of CPU performance. The Prestige 15 also has the Max-Q variant of the NVIDIA GTX 1650 graphics, so there was an edge in most games and graphical applications with the XPS 15. So basically, Prestige 15 wins in CPU and XPS wins in GPU. As a result, the Prestige 15 was warmer on the CPU, but cooler on the GPU. The Prestige 15 has the option of fan control, allowing us to better customize how it performs. There was definitely an advantage for the XPS 15 in terms of build quality and materials. It was more sturdy and solid in all regards. To be fair though, the XPS 15 is about 300 grams heavier, and also slightly larger in every dimension. So portability is the trade-off, though realistically I don't think that's a massive difference. The power brick with the XPS 15 was also a little heavier, as it's higher wattage for the higher powered hardware inside. The screens are a big difference between the two. If you want an OLED panel with superior color gamut, brightness and contrast, the XPS 15 is the only option, as the Prestige 15 doesn't have an OLED option. Both laptops do however have 1080p or 4K IPS panels, and the 4K ones should still offer better results compared to the 1080p options. Despite having a larger battery inside, the XPS 15 came out behind in my battery life testing, probably as a result of the higher powered specs. Inside, they're both somewhat similar. However, the Prestige 15 has the advantage of having two M.2 slots for storage, while the XPS 15 just has the one. I'd also say the Prestige 15 has better I/O. It's got two Type-C Thunderbolt 3 ports, while the XPS 15 has one. The Prestige 15 has USB 3 Gen 2, while the XPS 15 uses slower Gen 1. And the Prestige 15 is also charged over Type-C. Something I didn't like with the Prestige 15 was the micro SD card slot. Personally, I much prefer the full-size one on the XPS 15. The keyboards offer similar buttons, however I preferred typing with the Prestige 15, which also has larger arrow keys. The touchpad on the Prestige 15 was a fair bit wider, but both worked well. I'd give a slight edge to the XPS though. The speakers in the XPS 15 sounded noticeably better and got louder at maximum volume. In general, the XPS 15 does typically cost more money. However, when spec'd similarly, it's possible to get them for about the same price. There are of course thicker and heavier gaming laptops like the Helios 300 for less money, which will perform better in terms of GPU performance. So you're only really looking at the Prestige 15 or XPS 15 if you want a thinner, lighter, and more portable laptop that still has fair power. All things considered, I'm having a hard time picking between them as I like aspects of both, so I think it's going to come down to your personal use case. I'm leaning towards the Prestige 15 with 4K screen, but OLED and full-size SD slot with the XPS 15 would be good. I just can't justify saying I want an XPS 15, because I'd rather go for the Gigabyte Aero 15 or Electronics Mag 15, as they're both available with similar features, but better performance for similar money. So which of these two laptops would you pick? The Dell XPS 15 or MSI Prestige 15? Let me know which you'd get and why down in the comments. I'm interested to see which you'd prefer. And if you're new to the channel, consider getting subscribed for future comparisons and tech videos like this one.